The night is older now. The fire burns brighter, and in its glow something begins to stir. At first it is only the crackle of wood, but soon the sound takes shape. A rhythm, a pulse, a whisper that seems to move between the flames. We stare into it, transfixed, uncertain whether we are hearing or imagining. Then slowly, the realization dawns. The silence that once surrounded us has begun to answer back. This was the birth of the divine voice, and it changed everything. Long before scripture, before prophets and priests, the voice of the gods spoke in thunder, in dreams, and in fire. It wasn't a language of words, but of feeling, of resonance deep in the chest, the invisible tremor that made the hair on the skin rise. Our ancestors gathered around flame and shadow, listening for meaning in the wind, believing that the universe was trying to speak to them. And perhaps it was. Every great revelation began this way, not as command, but as conversation. Not a message descending from heaven, but a murmur rising from within. When we say the gods spoke, what we mean is that the mind began to listen. Fire became the first oracle. Smoke became the bridge between seen and unseen, and the sparks that leapt into the air, those were thoughts escaping into eternity. From the deserts of Egypt to the mountains of Sumer, the voice of divinity was not a mythic invention. It was an interpretation of consciousness. When early humans heard their own thoughts, they believed they were hearing the words of the gods. The mind, new to its own echo, mistook introspection for revelation. When Moses heard a voice in the burning bush, when the Sibyl spoke in trance at Delphi, when shamans trembled before the fire, it was always the same miracle. The human mind speaking to itself through symbol and flame. But there is beauty in the misunderstanding, because even if the voice came from within, its message carried the same weight. You are not alone. That single truth, the feeling of being seen by something larger, became the foundation of prayer, the first spark of dialogue between humanity and the divine. And as the centuries turned, that dialogue became a chorus. Every culture gave the voice a name. Egypt called it Ka, the spirit's breath. The Vedas called it Vak, the cosmic speech, the word that brought the universe into being. The Greeks called it Logos, divine reason, intelligence, the order behind chaos. And in every tradition, the story was the same. First, there was silence, then the word. But the word was never just sound, it was awareness given shape. It was consciousness becoming self-aware through story. To speak is to divide. Before language, there was unity. When the first voice echoed across the valley, it carved the world into two, speaker and listener, God and man. Yet both were mirrors of the same mind. When the priests of old said the voice of the gods came through them, they were describing a phenomenon still alive in all of us. The quiet intuition, the whisper of knowing, the guidance that seems to come from nowhere, but always arrives at the right time. In those ancient nights, the voice was not only sacred, it was dangerous. For the first time, words had power. A single utterance could bless or curse, heal or destroy. The magic of sound became the foundation of ritual. To speak was to create, to name was to command. And so humanity learned the most divine act of all, to give form to the formless. Through the centuries, the voice in the fire evolved into prophecy. Kings listened, nations obeyed. The unseen became the law of the seen. But the danger of listening to the gods is forgetting that they are our own reflection. The whisper that began as wisdom soon became authority. The inner dialogue that once guided the heart became an outer command that demanded obedience. And in that moment, something in the sacred began to shift. The voice that once comforted, now ruled. Still beneath the thunder of temples and decrees, a softer sound continued to speak. Not from heaven, but from within the human heart. It was the same fire, the same whisper, only waiting to be remembered. Every prophet who ever lived heard it. Every mystic who ever dreamed felt it. It was not power they sought, but reunion, to bridge the distance between silence and sound. And so the mind kept reaching. Every prayer, every chant, every song of devotion was an attempt to recreate that first moment, when the fire seemed alive, when the air trembled with meaning, when the infinite first spoke back. We built altars to remember the sound. We built languages to contain it. And slowly, we began to mistake the echo for the source. But the voice was never bound to temples or names. It is the spark behind every word we've ever spoken, the silent listener behind every thought. And just as we began to listen to the voice, we began to imagine the one who spoke. If the universe could speak, then surely it could see. And if it could see, then perhaps it could judge. The voice that once guided became a presence that watched. The fire that warmed now glowed with warning. The gods had begun to take form, and with them, the first seeds of fear. The fire crackles again. The voice fades. And for a moment, there is only silence. The breath before the next revelation. Because if the gods could speak, then they could also see. And what they saw in us would shape the heavens themselves.